I am Maria Garcia de Flori. What is holiness? How can a person live a holy life in the midst of a culture that doesn't seem to value holiness or even pay much attention to God? Well, doing the will of God is the answer. God is good and wants us to share His goodness and joy. You are made for love. But that does not mean that the goal of life is personal happiness. If happiness simply means getting what I want, then it is definitely not the goal of life. It is necessary to conform our will to the will of God at all times. Another wrong notion is that the holy things is to do what one least wants to do. Some young people have this kind of thinking when they are trying to discern God's calling for their life. A young man or a young woman wants to be a saint, and they feel absolutely no attraction or desire for the priesthood or religious life. But this antipathy leads them to conclude that the most holy thing would be to enter the seminary or enter a convent. When they simply cannot make up their minds to do this, they think it's a lack of holiness on their part, and therefore it disqualifies them from being holy. How can you know the will of God? Well, the will of God, you can know it starting with what you know. You already know that God will not call you to violate His word, His church, or a solemn oath that you have previously made, such as a marriage vow or a religious profession. You already know that you need to observe the 10 Commandments and the 5 precepts of the church. You already know that you need to be as attentive as possible to the great commandment to love God with everything and to love your neighbor as yourself. Loving God with everything means that you are making time every day to be with Him. These things are obvious, so start there. The next thing to keep in mind is just as simple. Keep an eye on the task at hand. The true saints are attentive to the present moment, whether that moment involves prayer, serving someone else, or enjoying a meal, a song, or an exercise. Holiness involves living in the present moment and being aware of the reality that God is in that moment, there. Then you're living a life of holiness. That is why St. Paul was referring to when he wrote, "So whether you eat or drink or do anything else, do it all for the glory of God." It is living a real relationship with God, knowing that He is attentive and present in every moment. Living like this is the recipe for authentic holiness. The way of thinking about holiness is something that, being generous and faithful to grace, returns to God the love that is given to the soul. So it is for God's sake and not for ours that we should want to be holy, because we know that with God we always win.